having the opportunity to learn about alternative investment strategies is a big plus, learning, knowing, educating, and see different opportunities to create wealth and therefore our financial freedom.
Welcome to The Path to Wealth, the show about well-being, fulfillment, and financial freedom. And I'm your host, Hannes Henschel. Welcome to The Path to Wealth. I'm your host, Hannes Henschel, and today's guest is Barbara Heil-Sonneck. Born and raised in Germany, Barbara became a pillar of the home staging and real estate industry in the US. She's an expert on short-term rentals, home staging, and multifamily real estate. Barbara has been in the real estate industry for almost 2 decades, and she's the co-author of an inspiring book, The Venus Approach to Real Estate Investing, which is especially helpful for aspiring and women real estate investors. She provides superior service and expertise in home staging, redesign, and education through her multi-awarded company, Design to Sell. It's a pleasure to have you on the show today, Barbara.
I'm very excited to be here, Hannes. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. So let's get straight to the core of your work. How do you add value with staging in the different segments of real estate that you're part of?
Well, home staging is actually the only tool you have available to increase perceived value of any property. So that is, definitely an amazing tool, because no matter what you're doing towards price, it's not changing the perceived value of a property. Don't get me wrong. A key element is that, the property is priced right. That's where the real estate agent comes in and brings their expertise, towards the market. But in regards to perceived value, that is where our industry and the experts in this industry can provide value. Let me share a couple of numbers. One important one is the number 90-10. Only 10% of our population can actually visualize three-dimensional. They have, 90% cannot. And that is something a lot of people, there's misconception out there. When you're in that 10% target, it's very easy for you to go into any space and consider a couple of changes and, we can do this and this. But 90% of the population can't. So what they see is what they get. So as it relates in what you're trying to drive with your listing in when you're planning to sell, is you want to stand out. So if there's 10 properties in the targeted market, you want to be in the top tier. And you want to definitely be the house who wants to sell first, not the house to be shown to sell another property.
Yeah. And I certainly fall into the 90, I would assume, because when I walk into a place, it doesn't mean a whole lot to me. I remember the last time I walked through like 20 apartments in New York. I knew what I was looking for, but at the same time, it's not that I have a full-blown vision. I'm like, okay, this can be this area and this area. I really fell in love with the apartment that I got last time because it already had a big pre-existing bookshelf. And I was like, wow. I always wanted to have a big, full-sized bookshelf. And it was right there. I was like, this is my place.
Well, we're making decision emotionals, and we're utilizing data and information to rationalize our decision, right? So that's the whole part to understand. And it's the same with spaces. And of course, HGTV has changed the whole landscape because the expectation setting of how spaces should look, are completely different than they had been a couple of years ago. Another big and point number two I wanted to make is that as I said, we're buying on emotions, right? That is the key part. And today, a lot of people and the majority of buyers, there's whole data out there, and I'm actually teaching a whole 3-hour CE class, on that subject matter for real estate agents. It's what every agent should know about real estate staging, is that over 95% of the population now, when they're looking for property, would like to have a move-in ready product. People nowadays do not really want it to invest in the house they're moving into. And we have to understand also the reasoning why. But pretty much as more and as closer you're coming to a move-in ready product, as easier it is to sell, and of course also get the price point you're reaching for. And of course, as higher you want it to reach for that higher gap of your return of investment, as better your product has to look, right? Think about TJ Maxx versus a beautiful boutique where clothes are hanging on hangers, individually. The perceived value, even if the product is very similar or might look very similar, is completely different because it's also a whole different experience.
Yeah, 100%. There's a lot about the experience. So when you say that they want move-in ready, does it mean they actually want it fully furnished, or to large degree that the apartment?
I think it depends. I think this really depends on the market. Our experience has been over the last couple of years that if we're talking about second homes, there is a higher, there's a higher probability that people like to have it, move-in ready. Because you want to entertain or you want to utilize space as quickly as possible. Also through COVID, there has been a whole change in regards to availability of product and delivery timelines. So, and again, it depends at what price range and in what market. But, but people like that. However, even so, they might not consider purchasing product or inventory or a furnished apartment. They for sure like the choice to possibly pick a couple of the items they see so they can utilize it, because we know on the majority of times when you're moving, you cannot utilize all of the inventory unless you're buying completely new. But when you have existing inventory, not everything might work in the new space. So there might be a couple of pieces where, it's like just the right thing you have in place. So having the option is another little value added opportunity.
So what are the logistics of staging on your end? Do you have a big warehouse where you have a lot of inventory? Do you work together with different furniture companies that provide you with a certain level of inventory? Is your plan actually to maybe sell some of it in the process of staging and moving it with the apartment? Help me a little bit.
Yeah, we have different options out there. Yeah. So when we're talking about staging and staging services, of course, there are several available. Now let's dig in what 90% of our business is right now, which is the vacant staging and or partially fill in of non-owner occupied houses. And that is, yes, you have warehouse of inventory. Our company has roughly $1.5 million on retail value of existing inventory rotating in and out of houses. What we're doing on the majority of time is we're leasing our inventory. So we're furnishing a house similar to a model home for sale. So there's a whole design concept behind. And then we are pre-selecting that inventory for stages. So there are two different ways and concept in our staging industry. So if we're digging in this, one is like a reset model. That means people utilizing inventory. The inventory is moved from one house to the next. It's more, I call it like a more rooms to go concept. So there's not a lot of variation, it's a reset of existing product with minimal design involvement. Our process is different. We are pretty much pre-selecting our inventory for the next property. So we are pretty much, kind of like I call it hand picking the inventory as it returns. If you think about operation, a successful staging company runs approximately on 80% of your inventory out, 80 plus inventory out, and 10 to 15, max 20% inventory in the warehouse. So the warehouse per se is a constant, turning inventory place. And so there are certain spaces then where inventory is secured, like similar to an assembly line for a next project.
Yeah. So, if we try to put a little bit of perceived value to this, how much can you help, and you can use percentages if you want, can you help a broker to increase kind of the offers that are coming in between a staged house and a house that's not staged, or an apartment?
Yeah, in part is like everybody is putting their own, there's exceptions and there's average. So that is the main part. So we're talking often about, average, and the average price increase, roughly runs, between 0.5 and it can go up to, 2 to 3% of the value. That's kind of like, on average, but it can even, we have examples. It was up to 5 to 10% of the list price. Again, the pricing strategy plays a key part. We can do our part on perceived value. We still know that a product has to be priced right for the market.
Yeah, obviously. I mean, if it's not priced right for the market, the furniture can only do so much.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you have a course where you're specifically helping brokers understand all of this. Maybe you can give us a little bit of a short download on what a broker is to gain from that course. And
yeah, well, it's a lot for the agent. So we're offering that course, to real estate brokerages, but also to mortgage companies or title companies who are marketing to the industry. We know that in that industry, everybody has to get their continuing education credits. So there are 3 continuing education credits for Georgia. And so in that way, this is a 3-hour class where the agent learns about tips and tricks in general, about, staging and design, utilizing. And there's a huge difference, because design means you personalize something for one person, versus in staging and merchandising, we're actually designing for the buyer. So that is, very important to understand as well. But the value there is to really educating the agents to utilize that tool, staging, as a module to separate yourself from your competition, and utilize, that as like, as a separator to close the deal, right? As an additional value you can bring to the table, either with a consultation and or allowing and sharing the impact of staging, for their listing. At the end, everybody is representing a brand. So I call our company the brand protectors for our clients, because we ensure that, they're focusing on what they're excellent in their marketing and sales strategy, and we're the extended arm to ensure the listing looks its best.
Yeah. What would you say is kind of the threshold at which price point it starts making sense? Where what's the value of an apartment or a home where staging starts making sense? Or would you say it's even at any point?
Staging and the staging process should be applied to every home. Now, let me expand on that. The staging process starts, is there for every listing. It is really assessing the product house as it is right now, and coming up with a plan of what can be done to enhance the perceived value. In a simple example, if you're looking at curb appeal, if you're looking at the rooms of an as-is product, you can give it a rating. Let's say we have a scale from 0 to 5, and I give it a certain rating. So it's a 3.5 on curb appeal now. It's a 4 on the living room. It's a 3 on the kitchen. It's a 2. You're coming up with a number. The goal is to increase that number for higher and increased value. That's really where it comes down to, and it's really understanding. We know in design, there are always opinions. But in a package deal, it is becoming what's the perceived value at the end. And of course, based on the data available, we know where getting your highest return, ROI, of your investment. So, one big element in the staging process is painting. Painting and color has a huge impact on perceived value. And also, is that house or is that product house on trend? Or does it feel dated? So if it feels dated, our goal is what can we do with the minimal amount of investment to change that perceived feeling of dated? And that can be paint on the walls. Often we're trying not to touch the trim. That's another element of cost. So we're really trying to focus. It has to be still a more neutral space because color is very personal. So we don't want to go, but we want to give it that design feel. And then we're talking about the different price points of a property. So going back to the staging process, it is assessing the as-is situation and coming up with a plan for improvement. And that applies to every house. There's always something which can be done to improve the perceived value. A lot of that depends also on how much are you pushing price, right? If this is a product which you're selling to investors, right? If investor is your model, you're looking at that process differently versus you're trying to sell to the end consumer. But even in the investment scenario, there are some basic things you might want to do because again, it might increases your showings, right? If it is an investor house and it's the house, there's a smell and, everything is piled up, people have a hard time to see. So it makes it much harder to sell. So there's a couple of things you definitely do even for an investment property, unless it's, if you strategically think about how you can utilize that element of perceived value.
Yeah. And what brought you from the staging to the multifamily space, and how you're able to apply all of your decades of knowledge in the multifamily syndication space?
Coming back before Design to Sell was born, when this baby was born, I was a real estate investor. After my, long corporate career, which is actually what brought me to the US, I actually on the side started investing in buying single family houses. And originally I, fixed them up a little bit and then rented them. Some of the others, I flipped. So I bought them, I redesigned them, renovated them, and then sold them. And so out of that concept, actually Design to Sell was born, and, started to decorate certain areas, learned a little bit more. The industry was at that point in time much younger. Now, the majority of people have heard the word staging, but if you go back, 15, 20 years, it was in its infancies. So we were part of the trailblazers in this market to really go out and educate, the public and specifically our real estate agents about this concept.
Yeah. And Then what was a natural progression for you into the multifamily real estate? Also, maybe where you were able to apply the staging knowledge together?
Last year, and it kind of comes back from the progression part I started, you're looking at different opportunities and how you can increase your ROI. So as much as I'm focused and understand and love design, the other part of me is like looking at the numbers. So the question is, how and where can you change the needle? And so you continue to educate of what is out there. So learned more and more about the short-term rental market, and actually started a second company with a business partner where we are going and purchasing short-term rentals. And we are trying, really, and it's a very niche product because we are targeting specifically to large dogs. So that's the side of the business. With that, I also saw an opportunity for our home staging company to add this additional service, to our market. Our core goal for now is to focus mainly, in our area, which is, around Atlanta or Metro Atlanta area, but our, reach, because, our niche market in the staging in the staging department is luxury homes. So I would say houses, between, I would say on average, 600 to 800,000 plus. List price is our target. That's our target market. We collaborate with a lot of other staging companies who are targeting a little bit more, the investor end and up to $500,000. And we refer business to each other in this spaces as well. But coming back, thinking about the investment side, this is what, we purchase houses. So big land, large land, smaller houses. That's our concept for that. I also saw the opportunity that now venturing out and offering the short-term rental furnishing to our clients, since it's a merchandising concept, however, it also has the hospitality element to it, is a nice plus. And I also always feel there's a difference, right? Only selling a product versus also experiencing it. So I always like to tie that both, hooking it together, because there's a difference between only saying versus doing and saying, because there's always the life experience of what is happening in the market, what is changing, and you can utilize all of that knowledge to serve your clientele. So that was the short-term rental. Then out of there, and again, I have been on the board of directors and have been involved with, our top staging associations around the country. So I speak and I also coach in that segment. We found and, ventured out into different options. So, why can't you have a hospitality concept more like in a broader sequence? Think about like a boutique type of hotel. So you have several short-term rentals and you're running them together. So that's where you can think about, the apartment investing and the short-term rental hospitality meet, which is now a cross market, to think about the whole hotel concepts. And so that's pretty much how it came. So I was interested, but the numbers of the apartment investment really spoke for me. And I have a strong passion to educate specifically women. That's really where it comes down to, but educate in general on other investment strategies, because as entrepreneurs or W-2s, we are in a wheel, right, of constant work. And I think having the opportunity to learn about alternative investment strategies is a big plus, learning, knowing, educating, and see different opportunities to create wealth and therefore our financial freedom.
Yeah, 100%. I resonate with that a lot. Maybe you can shine a little bit light on. So you straight up buy those houses that you use for the short-term rental. You don't rent them. You just straight up buy them. What gave you the conviction to go that route and actually buy those? Did you look at it also from a standpoint that those houses will appreciate because
Absolutely.
of the area.
It's a double. The part is, how quickly can you pay down the mortgage and or utilize, the equity in the houses to increase the opportunity to invest further. And again, there's different strategies out there, and you're considering how can you leverage, how can you make your money work the best and it doesn't matter in what market. The right market is always now, right? The part is, the right market is always now because the numbers have to work out no matter what. Comes down to everything, location, which is, a key part in that. And then, of course, we have to buy right. We cannot jump. It has to make sense, right? But short-term rental gives you a different way to look at opportunity. And again, it is depending on what's your exit strategy. So are you buying for buy and hold versus are you buying for turning it in 5 years, selling it 5 years? All of that, has a little bit of different, strategy behind in how we're looking at the data. But what we also know, and I just come back from a short-term rental conference I attended in Nashville, where I was very excited to hear so many, and specifically the top performers in that market, really understanding how the value of a good design impacts. Again, we're coming down to ROE, your bookings, and the experience. So, the times where, going out cheaply and only buying a couple of things, specifically in the vacation rental or short-term rental or experience environment, they're gone. And location is key with everything. So if, something worked, but the market is shifting, but part is, and it has nothing to do how saturated a market is and or not, but it depends on, are you on the best street? Are you on the best way to access, maybe walkability, the walkability scores? There are so many other things to learn, which applies, the same concept applies towards apartments as well.
Yeah.
From a location analysis and opportunity perspective, right? At the end, it comes all down to the numbers, but coming back to perceived value and design in how you can utilize really to change and attract. Color makes a big, difference, couple of enhancements. So it's the question how and what makes you different compared to competition.
Yeah. And everything you said rings so true with my personal experience lately, especially scrolling through short-term rentals. I'm certainly looking for well-designed places, that give me a certain experience.
Yeah.
And most of the time I find myself willing to pay a premium for that, where somebody didn't just put a bed and a towel, but actually put a little bit of thought into the space, makes it very nice and gives it a little bit of a homey feeling. So everything that you just said resonates with me. And at the same time, I think if I learned one thing in my real estate journey, that it's that location matters a whole lot. And while people, are happy and willing to find deals in like not only secondary but tertiary markets, that I think the real business is usually done focused on location. And usually the larger institutional investors are focusing on that for a reason. And obviously, yes, we as maybe family kind of like investors can make money in different kind of markets, especially if it's the back pocket, it's somewhere where we live, we might have an insight to things. But I think everything you said very much rings true for me personally, just reflecting on what you said.
Yeah. And I know you asked before a couple of data. So, if you're looking at the data back, I can tell you it is 50% less time on market. So from listing to selling, 50% less time on market. And again, if you do the analysis of all of your carrying cost, specifically if the house is vacant or lost opportunity, you can look at it from both angles. It, absolutely makes sense. Also, there's the saying, your investment in a well-designed merchandising strategy and or staging or, however, hospitality concept. But here from a sales perspective is definitely less than your first price reduction. So your
Yeah.
investment in staging is definitely less than your first price reduction. And we know the blooming phase of every product for sale in real estate, in single family, we're talking residential now, is the first 2 weeks. When it's put on the market, so the first 2 weeks have a major impact, on the success story of the house. Because after that, often the strategy has to shift. There's only one right time, to put the right product on the market. Sometimes, people try it a different way, but it requires then also a repackaging of the product, ideally, to represent it as hopefully something a little bit different. But then there's already lost time and lost opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So let's shift a little bit to something that's close to your heart, educating other women. I guess it's maybe like, why are you so passionate about it?
Well, because I feel, and again, part is like in coming back, I am, I have been raised by a family who lost everything in war. That were my, it was my parents' parents, but no matter what, you are raised based on value and what you have perceived as a child. I lived in a single, little studio with mom and dad, until I was 6 years old. We didn't have a TV, loving parents, but, very small environment and very nice, Yes, I always had food on the table, but there was no access of money. My parents lived nicely, but again, there was no learning about creating wealth or something in addition. I always have been driven, and I'm actually very excited. I think in April, I, together with 20 other very successful female women immigrants, we're publishing volume 2 of Successful Female Women Immigrants, and everybody's telling their story. The part is, the future is always now, and mindset shift is a key. And still to this DNA, we women undervalue what impact we can have, but also undervalue what we can deliver, because we have this, I call it like everything has to be 100%. I don't know, mindset, and maybe it's, it has different, don't want to go down that route now, but has different reasons why that is. So the mindset change showing, I come from nothing. I have not anything. There was nothing given. You can do it too. And stories resonate different with people depending, at what age you are. My message is for my tribe, for the people who can relate to me. And, I recognize that often when I go to conferences and I have the accent, right? You might experience that as well. There's an immediate connection when you are an immigrant. There's an immediate connection because there's something in common, an experience you have in common. And there's something when you are leaving your country for new opportunity. So there's a certain different mindset there as well. And I think, at the end, my goal is to really touch. For now, I want to, in the next, hopefully 2-3 years, I want to touch 1,000 women. I want to take 1,000 women with me on a journey. That number might increase over time, but I'm still going for a reachable goal, right? That's my part. I'm conservative, I'm, not risk adverse, but I'm conservative in my assessment. So 1,000 seems the right number for me, and that is what I want to go and influence, and helping others, to really seek out other opportunity, but furthermore, really believe in yourself, because if you set your mind on it, you can do it. It's so true, but you have to shift your mindset and your priorities.
What are some of the mindset and priority shifts that you maybe had to change coming from where we come from? Like, what served you being German and what didn't serve you? What had to change? What had to shift?
Yeah. What had to shift, if I come back to, being able and open to risk. So when I worked corporate and I had the opportunity to come to the US, I had to make a decision in 2 weeks. The opportunity was on the table, and I had to make a decision in 2 weeks if I leave my country, everything behind me, to come over to commit for a 2-year assignment. And, that's, it's still, it's still a quick decision. 2 weeks is not a long time. Yeah. And I had a start date, so I couldn't move that start date. So it's either yes or no. And I had to jump. So you have to be willing to make decisions, but you have to also understand that part. And I have to admit, the first couple of weeks I came here, I was on a team. I spoke the language, okay, not as good as I speak now. And it's still, sometimes I'm asking for my translator is not with me. But, and I had maybe 10 to 15% knowledge of what I was supposed to accomplish. And I had a team of 30 people coming in. Talking about stress and, and communicating and setting all of that up. So there is a lot of unknown you have to fill. And the only way you can fill it is with confidence first, right? Even if you don't know everything, right? You plug it in as you go and you ask for, for the additional skill sets to make it work. And, I got it to work. But there were days I was coming home, I was so exhausted and tired. And I was crying in my own corner, right? Barbara, what did you do? It's hard. It is so hard. And yes, but it was worse. It was worse, every effort I put in. I believe that we always have to get out of your comfort zone. So I was diving, I said I am conservative, but again, calculated risk. So I was jumping in to the, and diving with the sharks, but they were all fat. Right. So they were fat. There was nothing, it's what I say, it's different. Right. So it's calculated risk. I hiked Machu Picchu, still remember that. That was an amazing experience, but 5 days, right. There's, you sleep on the floor. Yes, you have some people carrying the stuff. That's an experience. That's something different. I took singing lessons for 6 months to perform at my mom's birthday. What I'm saying is, and I was nervous and wreck. I was a nervous wreck. I couldn't eat. We had the best food out there. I could not eat anything because I was so nervous. Because singing is not my forte in general, right? But I did it, and I did pretty good. So I think what I'm saying is, if you set your mindset, if there's really something you want to do, you can do it, but you have to prioritize different. I think one of the big parts for me is I had to leave that circle of comfort. I started to step out into circles and into places and went into conferences where I didn't know anybody. So suddenly, when you're reaching a certain part, right, your career, people are looking up to you and, you are kind of like in this top tier. I think the big part is you have to be willing to really learn again. You are now the student again. You have to be back to be a student, and you have to be able to listen, and you have to be okay with it. And then look, where you find your alliances. And I think that's a good advice I can share.
Yeah. You still remember what it felt like the first conference you walked in?
I was absolutely overwhelmed. NOI and cap rates and IRRs and yes, it's a different language. It takes, I would say, 6 months. But it's the same in corporate world, right? When you're changing jobs, every company has their specific language. Everywhere you work, you have to learn it, because in the beginning, you might only understand 50% of a conversation because you don't understand the language or the terms. So you have to learn and understand. You have to be willing. It's okay. It's fine. You hear it again and again and again. And, after 2 months, you say, okay, now I got that. Okay, let's move. There's always something to learn, and you have to be willing and open. So being coachable and teachable is another key element of success, in my understanding. Yeah. It's also very important in how you select employees if you want to grow. If they're not teachable and coachable, they're not the right fit for your company. If you're in growth sport, right? You want to grow and things are not fixed, so things are constantly changing. People have to be coachable and teachable.
How do you identify that in the early stage when you try to hire someone? How do you? Well,
there's certain test mechanisms, and also I utilize my team in the assessment, and in a moment I don't have them written down. If it's not written, it's not real, but I don't have everything in my head. Unfortunately, I was not prepared for the questions. Right now, I cannot pull this out of the. But it's really an assessment, and it's a couple of exercises, right? Part is, you see, sometimes it is how people also react, right? If I say things 3 times and the answer is yes, but nothing is changing, right? Then something is off, right? So something is off. But there are special assessments where you at least get a much better understanding there. But at the end, you also have to go a lot with your gut feel too. So I think that's still, the belly tells you the answer in so many ways.
But that's a tricky one to listen to. It's I remember one of my first business partnerships, like from day one, my belly was like, this is not it, but in so many ways, logically, I could explain myself why it was. So we went along with the business partnership, and it turned out not to go well.
Yeah, that is the most important part. Multifamily investment, and again, from the LP side, it might look at this a little bit different, but it's a team sport. This is a collaborative team sport, and you have to find your power team. And it's okay to take your time. You don't have to immediately jump, right? Because it is a business relationship for 5 years at a minimum, right? So that's 3 to 5 years. So you want to ensure that it is aligned with your core values. And time is too short. I am very strong about energy and how energy flows. Also, when I communicate with people, if the energy doesn't flow, I'm not forcing it. There's more out there. But when the energy flows, then it is exciting. It is really exciting, and everything accelerates. So if you multiply that and then it's accelerating to 2 or 3, it's a powerhouse. So it is okay, but you have to do your due diligence on what are your core values and also what are your standards. I love that. I love that book by Ed Milet, The Power of One More. And your standards really determine how you allow other people to treat you and your time.
100%. Yeah, I think both, especially the time one, and the same, it's true for value. Only when I put the value on my time, my work, that's when it really started going through what I originally thought was the roof, but maybe I was just shattering my low roof. And then the same is true for time. If we make ourselves too available, it's so easy for people to just take it for granted.
Yeah, Hannes, absolutely agree. I think, in time, and specifically, I have a certain level of maturity on this earth. So time becomes the most valuable good. And, when you talk about every successful person I had the opportunity to talk to and to speak to, time is their most valuable good. And they don't want to waste it. And they're very protective of it and their priorities, right? So also the power of the questions you're asking is also what allows you and what is moving forward, right? I know there's the saying, there's no dumb question, but honestly, the power of your question separates you too, because you always have a question, but if it is not meaningful and has no impact, then sometimes, you feel that in the group too, if certain questions and everybody gets kind of like, okay, let's move on, right? Let's move on and go into the next. So if you want to stand out, think about the right questions you're asking.
So what are some of the most powerful questions you're asking yourself at this stage in life?
One of the powerful for me is, whatever I'm getting is trying to dig deeper 1 or 2 layers of what the drivers are. I wanted to understand also how people are aligned and what values they are standing for outside of the business. You often get a little bit an idea, but I wanted to understand what are their standards. Because that's not often a question asked. Sometimes what you're getting and you can carry on. I'm trying to figure out something which goes 1 or 2 layers deeper than the original message. And often some of that comes out of the spot, and it's a coach. There's another book I'm just reading. I might share, maybe in the future when I might be back in next year or whatever on your show, I'm sharing something there as well. But I love that concept of really being very focused on your time, being very clear in what you're asking for. And give you one example. So yesterday, somebody was on stage talking about a concept. They're using short-term rentals. He's in the Dallas market, and they're marketing very clearly to pilots, right? So different airplanes, very niche market, focused concept, but I love it. So how do you get the attention of that person in that moment so that after he spoke to 50 other people at that conference, when I'm reaching out to him, he still remembers me? So I was easily taking what he already shared with me. He has a concept down where it goes down to multifamily or have a row of different product. I already, based on connection, know a project here in Atlanta where I can connect with another investor, these two people, so that they could at least have a conversation there, because this is a new build-to-rent concept. And it's a smaller investing group, and they're right next to the airport. So I see already the opportunity, plus I see an opportunity for us. So, but, having first somebody else in mind and bringing this connection together, see how value can be created, is, I think, the powerhouse I'm trying to utilize. So whenever I see an opportunity, I'm trying to see how I can match two opportunities and therefore put myself on the same platform of these two people, because they will remember that. Does that make sense? So that's pretty much like the strategy I am driving. In the past, it was on a smaller scale. Now it is really, I'm going after what makes most sense in that alignment. So I always have like strategic, or I was luckily, so there were two other speakers. One, he has a new product for the short-term industry. I was at the club waiting for the airplane. He came by. We had a short conversation before. He stopped. I said, we just spoke. Of course, the accent helps, right? The tall and the accent helps. Yeah. And we had a conversation, and he immediately invited us to meet in his headquarters and show us the whole headquarters. So great opportunity there. As I said, your network is your net worth. And for me, it is really building a lot of connections. That takes a good amount of time, but so far it has been very successful.
Nice. Well, Barbara, this has been super interesting, inspiring. At the same time, one of my favorite questions at the end is always, what do you consider a life well lived?
No regrets. I think at that moment, that's the way I start every day. I want to look in the mirror and say, there's nothing I have not done. So I'm not that's my list of goals or where I want to travel to. But I think I want to look back at things, some certain things you're pushing, specifically, I think on the relationship base. I think for me, the key part is there should be no regrets. I can look into the mirror and can say, I have, there's nothing I regret. I'm looking for growth. For me, even a mistake is an opportunity to learn for. It really I don't look at mistake. I try to push the negative words. I should not have used mistakes. I think something not going well is an opportunity to learn and to enhance it. So I really try to be much more sensitive about the words I'm putting out in the universe, because, what you put out there attracts, and I believe in energy flow.
Yeah, I think mistakes, problems, all of those words, they're just human labels at the end of the day. And in the further I zoom out or in on the grand scheme of things, like how would I even know if this is good or bad 30 years down the road?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, such a pleasure, Hannes. Thank you. Thank you for having me here. True inspiration, of course. Always laugh, when I hear another German, speak accent. So love that as well. Thank you so much. And yeah, hope we see each other at one of the future conferences.
Yeah, 100%. Where can people connect with you, find you, and connect with Design to Sell?
Yeah, absolutely. It's Barbara. It's actually, it's Barbara at homedesignTosell.com. Home, like the home, design, and the number 2, SELL.com. And or if it is real estate related or investment related, it is my first name, Barbara, at barbarahs.com. And I know, Hannes, you're putting the contact information, also in your links. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you so much for your time. This was very inspiring. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us at The Path to Wealth. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Check out our upcoming guests and be sure to share it with all your friends and family that want to take their life to the next level of wealth.